In this video, we're going to talk about pinning miniatures. Alright, we're going to pin some minis for some different reasons. We're going to take this guy, and we're going to pin him so I can stick it in a piece of cork so that I can put him on a scenic base easier later. We are also going to take this Death Guard Terminator of my son's that is broken and use pinning to fix the arm a little bit easier. And then here is my Hermione miniature. And this guy, I had some trouble putting her together, and then her arm fell off during a game. So we're going to see about fixing or properly assembling a tiny fiddly little miniature. I'll put timestamps down in the description if you want to look at one of these topics in particular. Alright, you're going to need a sharp hobby knife. You're going to need a pin vise, which is a little hand drill. You're going to need a paper clip that is about the same size as the bit you've used, some clippers, and some glue, preferably super glue. I think you pretty much always want to use super glue for this. So pinning this guy is going to be straightforward. Just check out how he's going to stand on the base and find a flat surface that will be in contact, and you want to use the very tip of your hobby knife to start a little pilot hole. This is just to make it easier for your drill bit to grab something. Line up your drill bit with that pilot hole, give it a few twists to get it widened out a little bit, and once it kind of feels good and then it's not going to pop out, just start spinning. You want to start under the leg so that you can get a good distance in there, and I try to drill a hole deep enough that the paper clip will sit in it horizontally without any glue necessarily. So I just kind of keep going, check it every once in a while with the bit in my finger to see how far it goes, and then take a piece of paper clip, bend it out. I'm going to use a straight bit and kind of poking it in there. It doesn't feel like it'll stay, so I'm going to drill a little bit deeper and keep poking the paper clip in there until it has a good fit. Then you're going to grab your clippers, and when you clip this, if you're not holding on to both ends, one of them's going to fly off. So I usually get it set up and then close my fist around it, or just make sure I'm holding the end, and there we go. She'll sit in there just fine. Alright, glue time. I'm actually going to use quite a bit of glue because I want this paper clip to stay in the leg. I'm going to use this actual paper clip, this pin, to put it in the scenic base. So this pin's never coming out of this foot, or it's never supposed to come out of this foot. I didn't let it dry long enough, so it came loose when I put it into the cork, but the super glue was still wet on my little disc there. So I just glued it back up again, and then set this piece aside to let it dry. And while that's drying, before I move on to the Terminator, I'll show you how I pin the heads of Space Marines. Alright, here's a Reiver head. If you're wondering why it's primed, it'll make sense in the next video. So when I do the heads, pretty much the same way. The pilot hole is way more important on these ones because you're actually drilling into a dome, and if you're just trying to use the pin vise, it's going to pop out a bunch. It's going to be very difficult. But if you just give yourself a little bit of a pilot hole in the bottom of the dome, by the time you grab that pin vise, it'll be able to catch really easy, and you will be able to cruise a hole right into this dome. And again, I give myself a pretty good depth relative to the piece. When I put this on the paper clip, which I already have in the cork, I want it to be able to sit comfortably on the paper clip on its own without requiring any glue. Alright, that is not going to fall off. So when I glue this, I'm going to use much less glue. I'm just going to get just a little bit of glue on the tip of the paper clip, and I want it just enough so that it will hold the head comfortably and won't pop up when I'm painting. But when I'm done, I want to be able to wiggle or twist this head off to put it on the miniature so that I can use plastic glue to adjust the facing and have some time to figure out how I want it in there. So just a little bit of glue on the tip, and if we drilled the hole deep enough, it'll sit comfortably on its own, and there'll be given time for it to harden. All right, pinning application 2. This is a Death Guard or Death Lord Terminator of my son's. It broke, and instead of just gluing it, I'm going to put a pin in to hold it more securely. So I just made a pilot hole in the side, and I'm going to start drilling. I actually drilled too far. I drilled into the opening of the chest cavity. You don't want to go that far. It'll make it harder to get the paperclip to sit comfortably in there. So I'm just, again, getting a hole that is deep enough for me to be able to put some super glue and put a paperclip in there and have the whole thing seal in. I'm going to go for a much smaller pin this time. So I'm just taking the end, closing my fist around so it doesn't go flying, and cutting the paperclip. And here is my tiny little bit. So I'm going to fit it into here. And that looks pretty good. Actually, it looks a little too long. So I'm going to snip off the end of it again and then dry fit it one more time. If I wasn't being lazy, I would have put some paint on the pin and then I use it to mark where I want to drill in the shoulder, but I just kind of eyeballed it and there was a nice little cavity there anyway. So I'm going to drill a hole on this side, then try fit the two pieces together, and if I'm happy with it, we are going to get out some tweezers and some super glue and put glue on one end, stick it into the Terminator, and then put glue around the other bit and stick the arm on. Sorry about the poor camera work right here. It pops back in just a second. All right, once I get this on, I just hold it for a bit, and then I'm going to set aside, and we're going to go work on Hermione. So these miniatures from the Harry Potter game were not my favorite. They were supposed to be a bit of a peg system, and there was supposed to be a hole right there in her shoulder elbow area, but it was filled in. So when I had the arm with the book, it had kind of a peg on it, but there was no hole to stick it in on the miniature. So I cut it flat and tried gluing it, which was a pain in the butt, and then it fell off when I was playing the game anyway. So I'm going to try to reproduce that peg with a tiny bit of paperclip, and we're going to use this piece right here. So I'm going to grab my hobby knife and try to put a pilot hole right here in this armpit, and then very slowly and very lightly I'm going to try to drill a hole here into Hermione Granger's arm. I took it easy and went really light until the bit got a good grip in the resin before I started cranking it out a bit. Once that pilot hole started opening up, I was able to speed up and blow it out a couple times, and I got a pretty good hole going on here. And I went a little bit deeper, but I didn't want it to pop out the front of her chest, so I made sure not to go in too far. All right, it's time to test fit the pin. So I just used my tweezers to pop it in here. And after looking at it, this one appeared to be a bit too big. So I went back and clipped an even smaller pin and threw that one in there to see how it would look. So I was happy with the size of that one. So I'm going to try to reproduce that process here in the arm. Tiny pilot hole, and I'm just going to use like quarter turns of the bit and just try to open up a little bit of a dome. And I did that all off camera because it was so small and fiddly, and I didn't want to stab myself in the finger. So after going very slowly and very carefully, I have a little bit of an indent there. And now it is time to grab the miniature and see if I can get this to catch on the pin comfortably and in a position that doesn't look absolutely horrible. And with just a tiny bit of playing with it, I was able to find that. So it is time to grab those tweezers, grab that glue, and try to get this whole thing together. It took a little bit to find a comfortable position where I could hold this together for long, but once I got it in there, it doesn't look terrible. I wouldn't say it looks amazing, but hey, 2 feet away on the table, it should be good, and her arm shouldn't fall off again. So that makes me happy. All right, now this guy's ready for painting, and then he'll go easily on a scenic base. This guy's arm is nice and secure. And now Hermione is all in one piece. She won't look like a one-armed witch. And next time, when I have such a tiny fiddly bit like this, especially if the peg system is filled in like it's not supposed to be, I'm going to grab my pin vise and do this from the get-go. If you have any questions about pinning, throw them down in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, give it a thumbs down. Tell me why down in the comments below. If you are interested in getting daily hobby videos, consider subscribing. If you're looking for other ways of supporting the channel, try following my social media links down below. And as always, please leave a comment telling me how you have been hobbying lately.